So now let's talk about using the with open function for dealing with files with Python. So when you're dealing with files with Python, there's generally two ways to do it. You can use with open to open and interact with a file, or you can do file equals open to interact with a file. The nice thing with open is that this will automatically close the file for you. So if you use the other way of interacting with a file and you forget to close the file, essentially what happens is your script opens the file, it kind of claims the file for itself, and then when it doesn't close the file, it then doesn't release it back to the rest of the system. So if your system tries to do a backup, it will not be able to back up that particular file because it's open by your script. If your script tries to interact with a file in other places, you may run into issues because it's already opened previously in the script. So one of the issues that you can have is you can open a file, and if you forget to close it, you have to manually close it with the other way of dealing with files, then you can run into issues. The great thing about with open is you're going to have a code block. So you're going to say with open, you're going to open the file, you're going to do whatever you have in the code block, and as soon as the code block is done, it will close the file for you. And so that's why the with open is such a valuable tool. Now when you're going to be using with open and you're going to be reading from a file, there's going to be two methods for reading from the file. Basically, you're going to grab the file information, the text from the file. You're going to have the read method, and what the read method is going to do is it's going to take all the data in the file and assign it to a single variable value. So it's going to be one variable value. All of the text in the file is going to go into that. That may or may not be useful for you. Then you have the read lines method, and this can be incredibly useful for you because what it will do is it will take every line in the file, wherever there's a new line character, and turn that into a value for an index in a list. So now you can iterate through an entire file simply by essentially the line in that file if you're going to be doing some more complicated tasks. So let's go over and take a look at how this code works. So here we are back in VS Code, and I have created this file called file.txt. This is a file, new line, it has data in it, new line that we will access with Python. So this is just a very simple file for us to have something to interact with. Now I have opened up the workspace here in VS Code, and my workspace is set to desktop, and so that is where file.txt resides. So this file that you're going to be interacting with, this has to be in your working directory. So if you're not using workspace here, it is most likely going to be in the home directory for your user when you're running this code, but basically this has to be wherever your home directory is for Python to be able to interact with it. If we go over and we take a look at the code, it's very simple. We have two versions. We have the read version and the read lines version. So with open, file.txt, R. So this is the mode. So whenever you're dealing with files, there's essentially three modes. There's W for overwrite, A for append, or R for read. You should only ever open a file with the mode that you need. This prevents accidental errors where you accidentally overwrite a file when you don't want to, or it also prevents hacking attacks where if hackers are somehow able to compromise your code, again, imagine much more complicated code that they're not able to write in the file. It's just a very simple security procedure. So anyways, with open, file.txt, read mode as file. So this is just a variable name that you're creating. You could name this whatever you want, just file is easiest. Then we're going to say content equals file.read. So all the text is going to come into file as an object. We then need to get that out as text. So file.read is going to bring that text out as a simple string, and we're going to assign that to content, and then we're going to print out the value for content, and that will be printed as a string. Then down here we're using read lines. So with open, file.txt, R for read mode as file, content equals file.readlines. So this is going to come in. Every new line character is going to be a different value at an index in a list, and then we're going to simply print out the content here. You will see the square brackets, and you will see those values in the index. So we go and we run this code then. This is what we can see. Oops. And so if we bring this up, this is a file, it has data in it, we will access with Python. So this is the string that we brought in. Then here, this is where we can see the read lines, right? The bracket for the list, index 0, this is a file, right? Next line, comma, it has data in it. Next line, comma, that we will access with Python. So depending on what you're going to be doing with the text that you're bringing in from a file, you'll either bring it in with read as a string or read lines as a list. So writing to a file is very similar to reading from the file. We're just simply going to be either using the W mode for overwrite or A for the append mode for writing to the file. It's important to understand the difference between W and A. W will either create a file or overwrite a file. So if you already have a file there, what's going to happen is when you write to it with W, it will delete whatever the current contents are and put the new content into that particular file. What A does is append, it will append to the bottom of the file. So it's very important you keep track of those so things don't go really bad. So for an example of the W, the overwrite mode, we're going to have a message here that equals hello world within h1 tags. So we are going to be writing to a web page with open file.html. So we're using that HTML extension so a web browser knows that it should open it up. We're going to overwrite as file. We're going to do file.write message. So when I do this write, it will then write this file to wherever my current working directory is. Again, since I have my workspace open here in VS Code, it is going to dump this in my desktop. As you can see here, there's only a file.txt. There are no other files here at the second. Then I'm going to run this. And now we can see that a file.html has been created. If I click on file.html, we can now see that we have this file.html and it has hello world in it. So I have written that web page. If we go over to my desktop, we can see that file.html now exists. When I double click on that, we can now see hello world. Right, so that is how you can use overwrite to be able to write to a file, and this is basically how you're able to dynamically write web pages using Python. Now let's look at appending to a file. So we have a message again. We're just going to simply put it within p tags, hello again, /p. So we don't have to bring in modules or anything else. Basically what we're just going to do is we're just going to keep adding hello again every time we run this script. So with open append.html, the append mode as file, and then file.write message. So the first time this runs, it will create append.html and write this. The next time it runs, it will add another hello again message, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. Again, if we look at my working directory, we can see append.html is not currently here. I then hit the run button. We can see that append.html currently exists, and it says hello again, right? And so if we go back to example, let's see, I run this once, twice, 3 more times. We go to append.html and we can see that it has been appended 3 more times. If we go over and take a look again at my desktop, we see append.html over in the corner. I double click and we can see hello again, hello again, hello again, hello again. Now if I go back to my script and I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever. I do it a lot of times. Then we come back to this HTML document. I hit refresh, and then it has been appended all those additional times. And so that's how append works with open function. So that's how you interact with files with open. Again, the valuable thing with this is that it auto closes the file for you, and there's nothing more frustrating than forgetting to close a file and your entire script just kind of goes to hell. Now, one of the things I will warn you again with dealing with files is one, this is going to be writing to your working directory. If you don't have the workspace open, that will be most likely going to wherever your user root directory is. If not, you may have to figure out out where your working directory is to make sure that everything works okay. The other thing is, do make sure that you have the proper permissions to whatever directory that you're trying to read from or write to. Again, we talk about the tech stack and how everything in the entire stack has to work together for your script to function. Well, here's the thing. If you do not have the permission to write into a folder and your Python script tries to write into the folder, then it's gonna fail. It has nothing to do with your Python script, it has to do with the permissions on your system. The same thing is true with being able to read from a particular folder. If you don't have the permission, then it's not going to be able to read. The more important thing to be thinking about when you create your Python scripts is if this is an automated process, let's say you have it going on as a service in Linux, that type of thing, it's something going on in the background, does that service have permission to either read or write to the files or folders that you're trying to interact with? That can cause you a lot of problems and it becomes frustrating because you as a new programmer think the issue is your Python code, and so you rewrite your Python code 500 times when in reality it's your permissions. You don't think about the permissions because you're not thinking about it, and then everything kind of goes to hell. But anyways, that's how using with open works, and is a great way for being able to do things, especially like being able to dynamically create web pages is just an incredibly useful tool.